Let us discuss the next topic and we'll talk about the next topic as photosynthesis. As we have discussed just now that photosynthesis is basically the way, the mode of obtaining food by the plants. I told you that plants are autotrophs. They have autotrophic mode of nutrition. So when we talk about plants, they prepare their own food. Then the process of preparing their own food is nothing but photosynthesis. So it is basically photosynthesis, a process by which plants prepare their own food. So let us discuss the process of photosynthesis with the help of this image. Here you can see a plant. You can see the roots of this plant. When we talk about photosynthesis, we say that photosynthesis is a process by which plant prepare its own food. So what are the raw materials that this plant need for the preparation? So when we talk about plant, it needs sunlight, it needs carbon dioxide, it needs water. And when we talk about these are the raw materials that are available to the plants easily, then plant will prepare its food in the form of sugar, or I can say glucose. Glucose is also a form of carbohydrate. So it forms glucose and it releases oxygen during the process of photosynthesis. So basically, what is this photosynthesis? It is the utilizing sunlight, carbon dioxide and water, and finally it changes into sugar in the form of glucose and release oxygen gas. This is how the glucose in the form of food has been formed, and it gets stored in plants. Like it may be stored in fruits, it may be stored in roots, it may be stored in stem, it may store anywhere in the plant in the edible part also. So basically now we can conclude that this photosynthesis is nothing but the production or the formation of carbohydrate in the form of glucose by plants. Utilizing carbon dioxide and water is the raw material in the presence of a green pigment that we call chlorophyll, and it is utilizing sunlight. So using energy captured from sunlight, and finally it releases oxygen as a byproduct. I can say that this photosynthesis includes the process of taking carbon dioxide and water and finally producing sugar, that is glucose C6H12O6, and releasing oxygen and good amount of energy. So basically, when we talk about photosynthesis, I could say that it takes place in the leaves of plant because there only chlorophyll is present, and chlorophyll is very important for the process of photosynthesis. My dear students, when we talk about chlorophyll, it is present only in green leafy substances. So it takes place in leaves of plants, it takes place in the presence of sunlight, it requires chlorophyll, it requires carbon dioxide, it needs water. And finally, the CO2 and water in the presence of sunlight, in the presence of chlorophyll, forms glucose, release oxygen, and we get energy. I hope the process of photosynthesis is now very much clear to you, because now we know what are the things required by a plant and what is the product, the main product obtained, that is glucose, and this is the glucose that we actually consume in our food. Either we talk about fruits or vegetables or any seeds or cereals or pulses, this glucose is stored in the form of those parts of plant. So this is about photosynthesis. Let us move further and we talk about how the gaseous exchange takes place on the surface of leaf. So here I am having a leaf, and if I say it with hand lens, that means microscopic vision of this, we can see certain openings are there. We call them as stomata. Here you can see two types of openings. One is the open stomata and other is the closed stomata. When we talk about the carbon dioxide gets exchanged with oxygen with the help of the chlorophyll present in the leaves and through the pores present on the leaf, on the surface of leaf in the form of stomata. So when we talk about the gaseous exchange, keep in mind, my dear students, that it takes place on the surface of leaf with the help of stomata. So opening and closing of stomata helps in the exchange of gases on the surface of leaves. Let us talk further and we'll talk about the structure of chlorophyll. When we talk about chlorophyll, we say that it is the green pigment which is present in the leaves. So leaves have this green pigment that we call as chlorophyll, and it helps leaves to capture the energy from the sunlight. That means it's not like that sunlight gives its energy and plant can take its energy in any way. It is chlorophyll that helps in capturing or absorbing the energy from the sunlight. And finally, it utilizes this energy to synthesize glucose, and finally, exchange of gases takes place, helps in photosynthesis process. So basically, this energy is used to synthesize or prepare food in the form of glucose with the help of carbon dioxide and water. So this is how chlorophyll helps in exchange of gases and preparation of food in the process of photosynthesis. Let us move further and talk about the structure of leaf. When we talk about the structure of a leaf, here I am having a picture image of leaf, and you can see the part where the leaf attaches with the stem. We call it as leaf base. And the upper part where this leaf has been bonded with the stem is axillary bud, and this small part is petiole where the leaf finally changes into this leaf blade. And in this leaf blade we are having certain these veins like projections, we call them as lamina. This is the midrib of leaf. So here we talk about the structure of leaf, how the structure of leaf looks like, and my dear students, it is very important for your examination point of view. So please do practice for the image or the diagram of this leaf. Let us move further and we'll talk about once the food has been prepared by the process of photosynthesis. Now the question is how this food has been stored in plants. So when we talk about food which is prepared by the process of photosynthesis is in the form of glucose, which is a carbohydrate. The food which is stored in plants is in the form of starch, and starch is, I can say, a bigger carbohydrate, that is polysaccharide of glucose. So once glucose has been formed, these glucose molecules get bonded with each other and form a bigger molecule that we call as polysaccharide of glucose. So basically whatever be the food has been formed in plant by the process of photosynthesis, it changes into starch. So it gets stored in the form of starch. Now, the gaseous exchange, as we have discussed about the stomata, as we have discussed about chlorophyll, let us see how the gaseous exchange takes place. So as I told you about the stomata, we have seen that the opening and closing of stomata, and this opening and closing of stomata actually helps in the exchange of CO2 and oxygen from this part of stomata. So basically what is the main center where gaseous exchange takes place? It is on the surface of leaf and we call it as stomata. So I can say that stomata helps for the gaseous exchange that takes place on the surface of leaf. So this is how the gaseous exchange takes place, and it takes place with the help of stomata. So now dear students, let us perform an activity to find out whether sunlight is necessary for the process of photosynthesis. So here we have two potted plants. What I do is I keep one plant in the sunlight and other in the dark. Okay, dark means there is no sunlight, and I'll keep this plant for 72 hours in the dark. After 72 hours, we'll perform iodine test. So when we add iodine to both the leaves of these two plants, we observe that one is changed into the blue color, other does not. Let me tell you that iodine gives the purple color with starch. So if starch is present, then only we observe the change in color. And starch is formed in the process of photosynthesis. So photosynthesis, the plant which has been placed in sunlight for 72 hours or for long, we observe that it has prepared starch and the color has been changed. But the other plant which has kept in dark for longer, for about 72 hours, we observe that no starch has been prepared because sunlight was not been available to this plant. And here you can see no change in color. So this activity very well explains that sunlight is very necessary for the process of photosynthesis. So here you can see different leaves will show different change in color if they do not place in the sunlight. So ultimately we can say that this sunlight is very necessary for the process of photosynthesis. Otherwise the starch or the glucose or the food will not be prepared by the plant. It means we can say photosynthesis doesn't take place. So the activity very well explains that this sunlight is necessary, is very important for photosynthesis. Let us discuss about some other organisms also. The another organism we'll talk about is algae. Algae are basically formed by the growth of organisms and they contain chlorophyll. That's why they are green in color. So they are green in color, it means yes, they have chlorophyll in them, and because they have chlorophyll in the presence of sunlight and by taking carbon dioxide and water, it can prepare its own food. That means photosynthesis process is observed in this organism also that we call as algae, and that is because they are autotrophs, and autotrophs because they have chlorophyll in them. So this green color indicate that they have chlorophyll, and when we do the test of this photosynthesis, we observe that this photosynthesis process is observed in this organism also.